Hello, my divine, infinite human beings. You're all that is, ever has been, and ever shall be. And I'm having a very important talk to you today about breaking through the paradigm, the finite paradigm of spiritual teachers, and really embracing the fact that you are your own guru. I'm doing it in front of the statue of Saturn here at the apex of the magic triangle of Sicily in Trapani, one of my favorite places, right before the Lion's Gate, because it is a time for us to make this shift. And really, it starts spiritually. And unfortunately, because we have been in a fallen planet, in a fallen matrix, a prison matrix, controlled by the Satan houses and Saturn families and all the fallen angelics, we have been disconnected from infinite, like a cell phone being disconnected from the finite net. And as a result, we've had to look for our information outside of ourselves. And we have had spiritual teachers, gurus, shamans, mystics, fortune tellers, speakers. The list goes on. And I talk about it in my book, The Infinite Human. I'm Elizabeth Monroy, the author of The Infinite Human, an Ascension Guide. And I have a whole chapter on spiritual teachers. I have in this lifetime been very much a part of many different spiritual groups. One for about 30 years, physical twin soul couple who taught us, and I write a lot about that experience. And then I have been in with other very highly evolved spiritual groups that have been communicated very high information. Much of that information comes from what is called the CD plates or the Emerald Records, or is the true information that the 12-stranded Yeshua Melchizedek, or the true Christ, translated and inscribed and wrote down, that was hijacked into the distorted version of the Bible. This is the truth that the Essenes were murdered for, the Cathars were murdered for, and anyone that held this information, both internally in their genetic structure and also in written scrolls, was killed for it, murdered for it, and then it was stolen and hijacked and distorted into this whole savior complex of creating a dependency on an external source of information, specifically a Christ, a savior, a spiritual teacher, a priest, a shaman, whatever. Now that is not the original intention of all these entities that perhaps did have higher strengths. Now what gives you more awareness? You know, maybe many of you have been waking up and you're looking around saying, why don't they get it? I don't understand. I can see clearly what is happening. Why can't they? And it's because we've had our DNA distorted. It is the DNA, the genetic coding, that connects us to infinite source. When you have all 12 of your strands of your DNA properly braided, properly coded, properly connected to, plugged into divine infinite source, then you can surf the internet. Then you are an infinite. Then you can do what we have always thought of as miracles. That was what the true Christ, the SO12, had. He had 12 strands of DNA, and walking on water, changing wine to water, doing all these things was our natural state of being. We all had that at one time before the fall, before we were pulled out of our true harmonic universe and our true natural Kristalla Cathara grid embodiment, and distorted into a carbon copy, a carbon-based beastie body. And that's what we're all walking around in right now, and we're restoring that. And that's what ascension is. It's restoring our true divine infinite human Cathara grid blueprint to its original intention, created by divine infinite source. So with that said, hopefully you could follow that. Throughout these dark times when we were not plugged in, many times we had to rely on sources, and there were people that came through, souls that came in and were able to, through manipulating bloodline, embody these higher genetic bodies. And Yeshua Melchizedek, Yeshua 12, was able to do that. Hence, he was a great soul who also was able to carry out his soul mission because he had the ability to, drive a Lamborghini when everyone else was driving Fiats, so to speak. I live in Italy. So, he was driving a 12-stranded, fully functional Cristalla body. Now, unfortunately, because this whole planet, I think you're beginning to understand, has been under the rule of dark angelics, Satan factions, Luciferian, Anunnaki, hybrid factions, the Illuminati, all that, have controlled the coming and going of souls. And Yesod 12, I think, just snuck in. He was actually illegitimate, so he wasn't planned. And but most of us were not able to, and hence many of us are just starting to reactivate our junk DNA in this timeline, because that's a whole nother story. But because of the past, there was only a few people that held the higher strands. They were not fully connected as Yesod 12, but they may have gone up to 5, 6, 7, 8 strands, which still, when you're driving a Ferrari, when you're driving a Fiat 500 or something, an old Volkswagen or something, and someone passes you by in a Ferrari, that looks good. And that's what happened with that was, first, how did they get in? Well, mostly, many of them were already fallen angelics who had maintained the higher strands of DNA, sometimes up to 8, 10, 11 and a half, as Thoth did. And they opted for bryoregenesis, which meant that they were kind of like criminals who'd been caught and put in jail, and they decided to reform. So as part of their reformation process, they were given, I'll just say, community service. Let's say community service, which meant they had to undo all the ills they did. And many of these were, of course, from the fallen angelics, and they were the father of all lies, Thoth being probably the greatest one. He was master at lying. And so what they had to do was undo all their lies. And part of that required, teaching, teaching the truth to us, little fallen angelics who were clueless, were running around going, hi, how are you? I just want to be really nice to you and make sure everything's happy. We had no clue as to the darkness that was in control of our planet or whatever. So these fallen angelics who opted for bioregenesis were given this tour of duty, this community service. Now, that's a good thing, right? Sounds really good in theory, but of course there's some problems with that. First of all, many of them were oversold by parallel universes, dark fallen angelics, who were really excited to get them into a physical body with higher genetics on this in our time matrix, on this earth plane, because they had plans within plans, and they could see how they could use them. They could be useful in the future, bringing hopefully bringing their flock into the fallen parallel to be fed upon. Okay, so everyone that does biogenesis kind of has that old scenario of an angel on one shoulder and a demon on the other, hearing, yes, I want to realign with the infinite, yes, I want to return to source, yes, I want to help and be of service to others. What are you talking about? You want to help these stupid idiot? Look at them, they don't know anything, they think you're a god. Why don't you take advantage of it? Why don't you you can kind of see where I'm going with this story, right? This film. So if you play the film out, and I start my Infinite Human book saying we're all divine stories in the mind of Infinite, the divine storyteller. So this is a story, and you can see how many times, especially nowadays, in our current history, we're looking at the Dalai Lama, who was muzzled and injected on live TV, how they've kind of led their herd, their flock astray. And you can see also that they are only human. They're infinite, but they're in human bodies still, and they're not completely plugged into the 12 their 12 strands. Otherwise they would be phasing in and out of reality, and not need to travel in cars and planes and automobiles and walking on water and manifesting whatever they want to. So they're still in this human trauma. And to look at speakers, teachers, gurus, whatever, it with judgment in the past. It's like getting upset with someone. Well, they took so long to get here because they were driving in a horse-drawn carriage, when that's all that was available back in the 1800s and on. Okay, so you can't really judge them, you can't really blame them. They were just part of it. They were doing the best they could with the vehicles that they were given, with the oversouling that they were receiving, with their own inner trauma that needed to be healed. So it's like looking back into the fallen finite matrix where, and I'll say something that Peter wants me to say. I don't usually talk this way. I'm a lady, but he says, everyone's shit stank, okay? And everyone's shit does stink, or everyone's poo-poo does have an odor, all right? Because we're all getting out of this fallen matrix. So it's time to not blame, not point fingers, not judge people, but we do need to discern. And now we're all coming back online. And I know I used to say, wow, why didn't I understand that when I was listening to my spiritual teacher and telling her to do everything she told me, 3 times, like a little sheepo, a good little sheepo. And I realized that was where I was then. And I guess I am very grateful to those spiritual instructors, speakers, teachers, whatever along the way, because they did give me glimpses of the truth. Now I move beyond them. I don't, go to them. I go to Infinite Source Within. But I think part of our job as the collective that is now accessing the infinite and moving about being the change as infinite humans is to not judge them, but also make them accountable. I just left a community of online community by someone who helped me a great deal, and I quoted her a lot in my book, and I'm not going to throw names because we don't need to go there with this duality, but we do need to sometimes make them responsible, because a lot of these spiritual teachers start thinking that they know everything, and you just need to listen to their voice and just fall into place and just be part of their community and not question, because they know what's best. Even though their writing may say otherwise, they're talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. And sometimes we need to hold them accountable and push the envelope a little bit to get the people that are following them, the herd, to kind of snap out of it, because the mind control is so powerful and it's in our DNA, and we always want to just sit at the feet of some angelic, knowledgeable guru. It's easy, and we want to be told we're so good. We want to be told we're good little sheepo, and that is never going to get you into the new paradigm. That is the spiritual aspect of evolving physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, and socially that you really need to snap out of and realize you are as important and valuable as any person. Even though they might have more awareness on a certain topic, there are things that that they don't know. And they're just as valuable as we co-create a new infinite human earth, an infinite human paradigm. All right? I hope you enjoyed what I said. I'm Elizabeth Monroy. Please join me on my website, www.infinitehuman.com, and I will be doing a talk show, radio show, live on Voice America, the Empowerment Channel, where you can call in with your questions and comments, and I'd love to have you be part of that. Ciao from now, from Sicily.